Hello everyone, welcome to today's learning event, The History of Product Management, proudly hosted by Product Management Advisor. My name is Tatev and I will be your coordinator for today's session. We are thrilled to have you join us as we explore the stories, frameworks, and real-world lessons that continue to shape modern product leadership. Today, we are honored to feature a special guest, Steve Johnson, the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Product Growth Leaders. Steve brings decades of hands-on product experience, and he is the creator of the Core's Open Framework, a powerful model that has helped countless teams simplify complexity and focus on what really matters, solving real customer problems. Alongside Steve, we are also joined by Rose, founder of PMA, who brings deep insight into how product strategy, operations, and customer value intersect. Here's what's ahead on our agenda. First, we will dive into Steve's journey and how his approach has evolved. Then we will explore product management then and now, followed by discussions around process, simplicity, team roles, and cultures. We will wrap with insights on career growth and leave time for your questions at the end. So if you have any questions, feel free to enter your questions in the chat at any time through the session. We will do our best to include them during the Q&A segment. If you experience any technical issues, just drop a message in the chat and we will assist you right away. So feel free to address any questions that you have. And whether you are early in your product journey or a seasoned professional, our hope is that today sparks new ideas, practical takeaways, and maybe even a fresh perspective on how you build and lead. So let's get started. Please join me in welcoming Rose to the virtual stage to kick us off. Rose, you can take over.
Thank you, Tatev. Thanks for the welcome, and welcome to everyone. I appreciate you being with us today. I'd first like to say at PMA, we believe in the power of shared experience. That by bringing people together, we can all learn faster, we can grow stronger, and we can lead better. That's the mission and what the PMA Learning Event is about, and what today's event is all about. The PMA space connects, inspires, and challenges all of us to think a little deeper about ourselves, how we learn, and what we want to achieve. And with that said, we're honored to have Steve Johnson with us today. Steve is someone who spent his career coaching, building, and shaping product teams with insight and a strong passion for this business. Before we dive into the conversation, though, I'd like to give Steve a moment to introduce himself in his own words. Steve, for our audience, would you like to tell us a little bit about your story, what got you to this point, and maybe a little bit about product growth leaders?
Sure. Well, everybody's journey to product management is different. It's really unlike any other job. But my first job out of college, I was a programmer. And a couple of years in, my boss said, "I don't think you're going to work out here." And I'm like, "Oh, shoot, are you firing me?" And he's like, No. A buddy of mine is hiring for sales engineers, a job I had never heard of. And so I interviewed and got the job and started doing sales engineering. And if you're not familiar with that role, it's typically in a business-to-business scenario. Typically, two people go on a sales call. One of them knows the product. The other one drives the car. And so the first one there, the one who knows the product was the sales engineer. And a few years in, I thought, well, shoot, I can drive a car. Let me go into sales. And so I went into sales and found out there was more to selling than just driving the car. There was also buying lunch and discounting. But I became like the #1 sales rep for this one product. And my boss said, "Hey, I don't know what you're doing, but could you train the rest of the office?" And so suddenly my office is the #1 office in the country for this product. And the VP of sales calls me and says, "Dude, I don't know what you did to Virginia, but could you do it to the rest of the country, the rest of the sales offices?" So I did this little road show and ended up at the end in corporate headquarters. And the VP of marketing came up and said, dude, who are you? And I said, oh, I'm just a sales guy from Virginia training sales reps on how to sell this product. And he said, but see, that's not your job. That's the product manager's job. And I said, wow, really? Why isn't he doing it? And the VP said, that is a very good question. So he hired me as a product manager, what we would now call really a product marketing manager. And then I moved up through the ranks. I was a product manager at a few different companies, became a director, became a VP. And then a buddy of mine started Pragmatic Marketing. And I joined that company as the first instructor and worked for them for about 15 years. And then about 10 years, 12 years ago, I left that company to start Product Growth Leaders to focus really on helping people do the work. So it's like, you know, if you're going to learn to fish, you could go take a lecture about fishing, which probably wouldn't work. Or, you know, a consultant will fish for you and hand you a fish. But what you really want to do is have somebody in the boat with you who knows the lake and knows what reel to use and what rod to use and what bait to use. And so that's really what we do at Product Growth Leaders is we kind of embed ourselves in your team and help you implement the best practices of product management.
Okay, that's a great overview. And I'm happy to say I was a student at Pragmatic, and I learned a lot from that organization. So that was nice to hear that you were one of the first instructors there. I did see it on your resume, but did not know you were one of the first. Well, let's dive into the conversation. And maybe we'll begin with a broad view. So you've been involved in product development for decades. In your experience, how has the role of product managers changed over time, do you think?
Well, you know, I think the product management role is continually changing, honestly. But the first product manager I ever met was in 1985, a lovely woman named Georgia Shattuck. She was an MBA. She did, you know, PRDs and some of the things that we still talk about. But her orientation was very much around the business of the product. And then the Agile Manifesto came along, and the timing of that was kind of interesting. It was like 2000, give or take, maybe it was 2001. And a lot of these things we now know as Agile methods had been produced. And one of them in particular, Scrum, defined a new role. They didn't want to use the word product manager. They came up with their own term, product owner. And that threw yet more confusion into titles and roles and such. But as a result of that, I saw a big swing from a business orientation of product management over to a technical orientation. So like from strategist to secretary. And I'm seeing it shift back now, particularly in the case of like AI. I think we're going to see a meteoric growth of new applications built on AI. And yet, pretty quickly, we're going to say, well, wait a minute. I know we can build it, but the question is whether we should. Is this thing valuable to our customers, and is it viable for our business? And so I think what we're going to see kind of in the near term, well, in the near term, we're going to see everybody getting fired, right? I mean, it's like the CEO thinks there should only be one person at the company, and that's the CEO, and everything else should be AI. But in reality, I think what we're going to find in a couple of years is people are going to realize the importance of a product manager who is guiding the product, making sure that we're solving a problem that people are willing to pay to solve, and that we're solving it for a market full of customers rather than the one customer we talked to before we came up with the idea.
Go
ahead, Ross.
Yep, sorry about that. Did you want to finish that thought?
Oh, yeah, I had one other thing. I wrote a book a few years ago called Turn Ideas into Products. And I interviewed 100 heads of product management and asked them about the impact of Agile on their organization. And 50% said it had been a godsend. And 50% said it's been a freaking disaster. And what I saw was the places where Agile succeeded, they turned their business analysts into product owners. And the places where it failed, they turned their product managers into product owners, and completely lost this aspect of product managers being the true representative of the market and the business, and turned them into much more of a business analyst role. And those are the ones who really struggled with Agile.
Yeah, maybe you answered this question. So as the role of PMs, morphed over the years, maybe they gained more influence. They certainly picked up complexity, and now with AI, it's kind of evolving. It's changing again.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think it might have been lost along the way, or what tools or skill sets might be worth bringing back if PMs lost something from what they used to have to what they need today?
Well, I think it really is two things. It's business skills, but also market research skills or customer discovery skills. I was talking to the CPO of a well-known company, and he said, I like to think of the product manager as like the waiter in the restaurant. The customer comes in and places their order. The product manager writes it down and takes it back to the kitchen so the developers can whip it up. And that's how we build product. And I'm like, oh, wow, that is so not product management. What we need to be looking at is not the needs of a single customer, but the needs of a market full of customers or a market segment full of customers. And yet when I run my courses or I do my coaching, I almost always ask, when was the last time you talked to a customer? And product owners typically say never. How in the world can a product manager or a product owner represent the market to the dev team, as well as the marketing team and the sales team and the support team, if they've never actually experienced time with a customer? And so those are the two things I would say that we need to bring back. This business savvy of making sure that we're focused on achieving a viable business by solving real problems that exist in the market. So it's business skills and market focus.
Yeah, I agree with that. We're not going to get too far if we're not delivering products that the customers require or love. I want to just get into one of the frameworks you helped develop is the Quartz Open framework. Can you share, well, maybe for the audience, high level, what it is, and then share the how that came about, the story behind it.
Cool.
And then what makes it different from other models?
Gotcha. Well, let me start with that. There are a lot of models that attempt to profile the role of product management or attempt to define a process for the product lifecycle. And they all feel really heavy, particularly in, kind of an agile world. And so instead of a stage gate or a phased process or a kind of a linear left to right model, I pulled together a few dozen practitioners and consultants and said, let's create something that we can all use. And the Quartz Open framework is the result of that, which I'm kind of showing there on my screen. And the challenge I find is that whenever we get like a project management office, they say, oh, we need a process. And they almost always reinvent waterfall. So, we have, these are the steps we go through, and here's the checkpoints we have, and this is the go, no-go decisions. And that's not necessarily bad, except that learning only occurs twice, before you build the product and after you've finished it. And the reality is your process wants to be the process needs to be a wheel, not a line. And at the core of the wheel is continuous learning. As we talk to the developers, they give us some thoughts. You go, wait a minute, we should go back and rethink that a little bit. But the quartz framework extends, I think, beyond what most product frameworks do, which is they focus on only the creation. But actually, we begin with defining what problem it is we're trying to solve and for whom. I talked to somebody just yesterday who was asking me a whole bunch of questions about should he create this, that, or the other. And I'm like, well, let's go back to the beginning. What problem can we solve? What problem can you solve for a defined set of customers that you're uniquely qualified to solve in a way that is different than what's already out there? And he's like, I'm going to have to get back to you. So we start with, defining what it is, and then we commit the resources to approach it. I was working with a team recently. The CEO said to me, some of my ideas, I haven't gone forward. And I'm like, well, who did you commit to take it forward? And he was like, oh, no, I just figured the product managers would pick it up in their spare time. And I mean, there's no such thing as spare time in product management. So first step is define it. Second step is to commit the resources to move it forward. And then as we work with our creation teams, we describe the problems and the people who have them so that they can innovate solutions. And sometimes the solution is software, and sometimes the solution is an ebook, and sometimes the solution is documentation, and sometimes the solution is like a service. And then there's all sorts of DevOps methods in the create stage, but they end with the project is done. But wait a minute, you got to get into the hands of customers. So we need to prepare the organization to support the product going into the market. So we need a go-to-market strategy, we need a launch plan, we need training for the sales team, the support team, the services team, and only then are we ready to deliver it to customers. And then as soon as we've done that, we start tracking metrics, we get feedback from the market, we do, win-loss analysis, and we learn a whole bunch of things that need to go into the next definition of that same product. And so the difference for one of the ways this tool is really helpful is a lot of people confuse project management with product management. And in project management, we build it one time, we ship it, and we walk away. Whereas in product management, we define it, we build it, we ship it, we define it again and build some more and ship it. And that goes on continually until we make a business decision to retire the product.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the term simple. So that brings us to the next section. I think you're known for advocating minimal process. So I'd like to talk about that a little bit. What does minimal process really mean? And why is it so important for product organizations or product leaders to think that way?
I have seen process diagrams that cover the wall. I've seen, I met a project, a woman representing the PMO, the project management office, and she had a 150-page procedures manual. And she couldn't really describe how that would benefit either the product or the product managers. It seems like a lot of today's processes are more about governance and policing rather than what I think it should be, which is a minimal process that people can quickly understand and follow and gives us the guide to make sure we don't make mistakes. I mean, one of the things I am concerned about with AI is as we open up these agents to sales teams and marketing teams and support teams, do they have the understanding of privacy and governance and the use of PII? Or are we going to suddenly start building a whole bunch of agents without some sort of governance about protecting our information. And so anyway, as I said, the typical project is convoluted. It looks like, if you've ever seen the subway map in Japan, that's what a lot of processes look like to me. And we should be able to explain our process pretty simply, so that people can follow it. I have a friend who's a police officer, and he says there's really two kinds of police officers. One is a public safety officer, and the other is a law enforcement officer. And a law enforcement officer will comply with the law, whether it makes sense or not. And a public safety officer will make sure you're not doing stupid stuff that might hurt other people. And so one of the things that I do that I shouldn't admit to online here, I sometimes turn left at a red light at night. I look, there's nobody coming a mile that way, there's nobody coming a mile this way. The left turn is illegal, but I'm not putting anybody in danger. A public safety officer will say, now, Steve, stop doing that. But a law enforcement officer will write me a ticket. And I think process helps us know what is safe as opposed to what is the law.
Makes sense. In your experience, Steve, I imagine you've seen plenty of misguided processes and maybe a lack of processes in other cases. And I suppose that's why companies or product leaders call you in to help. But where do you typically see companies overcomplicate their product efforts? Like, where do you see companies or product leaders go wrong?
Well, I think there's actually two scenarios. I once worked with a billion-dollar company that had so much process, nobody could get anything done. It seemed like there were 1,000 people who could say no and 0 people who could say yes. And the following week, I was working with a startup, and I thought, wow, this is going to be great. They've got no process. And then a week later, I was pulling my hair out because they had no freaking process. We need some process or some rules, and a good example of that is roads. Here in America, we drive on the right-hand side of the road. Let's just all agree, right-hand side of the road is the place to be, unless you're in England and there's the left-hand side of the road. That's cool, as long as we agreed on it. But if you don't have that, if you don't have lines on the road, if you don't have guardrails on the side of a big drop-off, it's super dangerous. And so that's why I advocate a simple process that people can understand and know their role in it. And the more we try to anticipate edge cases, the more we turn it into a 150-page procedures manual. And it's like you can't figure out how to do anything here because there are so many checks and balances. I once worked for a boss who would basically create a new sub-process or a new rule or a new policy every time somebody made a mistake. And I had a case where I called him and I said, hey, I made a mistake today. And he said, oh, I explained the scenario, and he said, oh, okay, cool. The next day, there was a new policy that you had to sign some document that said you wouldn't do the thing I did yesterday. But the thing was, I knew I made a mistake as I was doing it, and I couldn't get out of it soon enough. But then I reported it. I think that's the process. If you make a mistake, recognize it, let your boss know. We don't need another page in the procedures manual for that.
Yeah, I love that analogy. Right side of the road, easy to understand, simple, straightforward, and everyone can agree to it. There are different ways to solving problems, different approaches that can lead to the same desired outcome. And some companies or product leaders may find it difficult to decide what's the best process for them, right? Based on, whatever their own capability is. So do you have a go-to template or activity that consistently helps teams gain clarity and momentum? Teams that might be lost. Like you mentioned, that billion-dollar company you work for,
Right.
They had, they had nothing going on. They had no process. Like, what's your go-to? Like, if that you can count on that, hey, listen to this and this will get you straight.
Well, let me first say that there's no silver bullet. I don't really believe in industry best practices. I mean, I do think, in America, we should all drive on the right-hand side of the road. But, I think a lot of times people say, well, this is what we did at my last company and it worked great. And maybe it did. Your company is different than any other company in the world. The products you build are different. The people you have are different. Your mission is different. And why do we think a cookie cutter approach makes sense? So I believe that what we can do with Quartz is structure the conversation and then say, okay, what's the minimum amount of activities, artifacts, ceremonies that are necessary to complete this step and feel confident that we can move forward? And what are the conditions where, as we move forward, we say, whoa, wait a minute, we have to go back a step or two to rethink this. But I typically start with the Quartz framework and do exactly that work. What do we need to learn here? What do we need to document here? What approvals do we need to move on from here? And then walk through each of those phases to make sure that it's light enough that people will follow it, because if it's heavy, people will try to bypass it. They're like, oh, well, see, my product's different. It's a service. It's not software. So we don't have to follow your stupid process. I mean, if the process is too heavy, and, back to the law analogy, I am breaking the law when I turn left on red, except I know I am, right? But a lot of times people are like, well, there are so many laws, I don't even know what the laws are. And I didn't realize that spitting my gum out on the sidewalk was illegal, because who carries around a law book with them all the time? So I think you want to embrace the idea that your company is unique and your processes should be too. And also, process is like software. It needs to be continually redefined or re-examined and say, you know what, it's not this portion of it is not helping us move forward. Let's optimize it. So just as we maintain software, we need to maintain our processes and policies such that if something's not working for us, let's change it. Let's fix it. Let's eliminate it.
So don't be so rigid. It's good to have guidelines, but let's assess each situation we go in, because no two things are the same. No two companies are alike. There's variables that can make a difference. Yeah, thank you for that. Let's shift into team dynamics. So how should product managers be collaborating with cross-functional roles? So, you have designers, you have engineering, you have developers and marketing. How should product managers, go into those relationships?
Well, I think for the start, they should have relationships. I think a lot of times we throw stuff over the wall and then run into the night. We create a JIRA ticket, but we don't have a conversation with the developers who are doing the work. I'm delighted to see that more and more people now are advocating for UX having a preferred position in this product team, what's called a product trio. I extend that to the product manager, a UX designer, a dev lead, of course, but I advocate for a quad, which has a fourth role, which is the product marketing manager, that says, when we're done building this thing, we've got the product manager already building the go-to-market stuff so that we can get the product in the hands of paying customers confidently. And I think most teams don't look beyond release. And one of the things that I've written about is release is the end of a creation process. It's the end of development. Launch is an entirely other thing. Launch is preparing your employees and your customers to receive this thing when we're ready to deliver it. So it's like release is the end of something and launch is the beginning of something else. And right now, Apple is getting people into their preview program for their new operating system. And people, some people like me are like, well, I think this is cool, let me play with it. But there are institutional buyers who are saying, well, let's make sure all of our apps will run on this operating system before we roll it out to everybody. And I think most teams forget the post-release stuff of preparing the organization and preparing the customers.
Many organizations and product teams, they get caught up in the minutia, the details, the deadlines. They have to, meet certain time conditions to ship a feature or to release a product. And that can get a product team into deep trouble. So what are some signs that a team is neglecting, vision sessions or strategy for the product or discovery, or some of the things that really need to come first before you rush to meet that deadline?
Well, I think most product failures are the result of two phrases. One is, I talked to a guy, and the other one is, people ought to want this. So as part of my own discovery, it is curious to ask for the product managers, the product owners, the UX designers, the dev leads, when was the last time you had a conversation with a customer when you weren't trying to sell them something? And that's a great leading indicator. The trailing indicator is we went through all this work, we gave it to the sales force, they come back a month later all beaten and bloody and saying, damn, nobody wants this thing. And you're like, wow, we really dropped the ball in one of two ways. Either we didn't adequately prepare the sales force, which is likely, but the really dangerous one is we solved a problem that people don't have. And by the way, a lot of us are doing that right now with AI. The board wants us to have an AI product. The leadership wants us to have this AI product. We have no idea what to do with this hammer, where we're looking around for a nail to hit.
Yeah, that's the truth. I know we've had a lot of discussions around AI. It seems like the only articles that are the only thing people are talking about is AI.
And
if
we've
someone
been here before, right? Years ago, we all had to have a .com, and every people went off and like renamed their company to have a .com in it. And yeah, I mean, it's like every 5 to 10 years, there's something like this that everybody says the world is forever changed. And it turns out, don't get me wrong, I'm wild for AI, but it isn't the answer to every problem, and it doesn't replace human judgment. I think of AI is, particularly generative AI, is like a book smart intern. You still have to check their work.
Absolutely. And if you don't, I think you can get in big trouble.
Yeah.
For someone who's stepping into their first head of product or leadership role, what should they focus on in the first 90 days in your mind?
It's funny. I have read articles about, your first 90 days where they say, certainly for product managers and sometimes for product leaders, spend a lot of time understanding the technology. And my sense is there are plenty of people here who know the technology. What I would do in my first 90 days is get clarity on what's working and not working in the process of going from idea to market. getting clarity on roles and responsibilities. It's amazing as you go through the details of who's responsible for doing what, where there's a lot of finger pointing, where there's people who say, well, I need to be an approver of this, or I need to be involved in this, or I couldn't care less about that. Just tell me, the end game. So defining your process and defining your roles would be early on things for me. And then, frankly, becoming an advocate and a champion of the product team. I did a session a while back, and the VP of, no, it was the CEO, came in and said, can I say a few words before you begin? And I'm like, oh, this is super. I've got a room full of product managers. The CEO is talking to us. It's going to be great. And the CEO comes in and says, we've just, I'm so proud of the work that we've done in sales and marketing and development. This product has just done so well. And he went on and on and on. And it must have been 10 minutes, I guess, and never once mentioned product management. And when I talk to VPs, they can't crisply tell you what product managers do for them or how they're perceived. And if you talk to a VP of sales, they'll generally say, they don't support my sales team enough. And if you talk to marketing, they say, well, yeah, we need a lot of technical information from them. And, we need to know all the features we're going to ship in the next 3 years. And you're like, wow, you've never worked for a software company. And you talk to the VP of development, and they've got some reasonable stuff, like, I'd like to see a roadmap. But I think one of the roles for the head of product management is to make sure that the people around, that their colleagues understand the scope of product management. It's not project management. It's not UX design. It's not dev lead. It's this other thing. It's this business representative at the product level, ensuring that we're building stuff that salespeople want to sell and customers want to buy. Or as Marty K would say, it's both valuable to our customers and viable for our business.
Got it. All right, so we're going to move to our next or our last category here, reflection and career growth. So I'd like you to take a look back, Steve. What's one lesson you wish every product manager could learn early in their career, or they should learn early in their career?
I have two. For years, I have been saying our opinions, while interesting, are irrelevant. The source of product management credibility is quantified market information. Being able to say, these are the requirements of our customers based on quantitative and qualitative research. And yet, so often, even today, even in product management, we have people saying, I think people would want this. Or a sales guy saying, I might be able to close a deal if we commit to this. Or a CEO saying, God spoke to me in a dream and I've got this great idea for a product. So the first one is, your opinion, while interesting, is irrelevant. And the second one is, when customers describe a solution, they're almost always wrong. When customers describe a problem, they're almost always right. And so, the final bit of advice there is, think of yourself as a problem manager. We need to identify friction for our customers and our sellers and address them in products or services or promotions or campaigns. So instead of saying, oh, a customer asked for a feature, let's build the feature, we need to say, well, what's the problem underneath that? And is it a big enough problem for us to bother? And is it a big enough problem to solve is the solution going to solve the customer's real problem? And I think often, as I've just said, when customers say they need a solution, they're almost always wrong. But when they know when they talk about a problem, they can talk in detail about it. And that's the real gold in a customer conversation.
And I mentioned this in the beginning, and I picked this up from you, is you love product management. I hear it in your voice. I see it in your words when we are talking about a certain article online. After all these years, what keeps you energized about product management?
I think it's the fact that it's just so truly cross-functional. You work with customers, you work with sales teams, finance teams, marketing teams, development teams. We touch every part of the organization, and I've seen it done well, and I want others to have that same joy. I've seen it done poorly, and it's so saddening. I hear people in product roles, or well, no, even like development leads and UX people are like, Steve, can you help me? I've got a terrible product manager. And that, I guess that's my mission, right? Is to create a world where product managers are respected and are actually bringing value to the product decisions that we make. So I think about that every day.
Great. So looking ahead, and this might be a little difficult, but where do you see product management heading over the next 5 to 10 years? We talked a little bit about AI, right, coming into the picture now, very strong. Where do you think we're going with this craft?
I truly believe the pendulum is swinging back to product management as a business role. For the last 20 years, product managers have been pulled ever more into the technical side, doing project management, being JIRA writers, working as an adjunct to the development team. And yet on LinkedIn, on the various communities that I'm part of, I am seeing more and more people talking about outcomes rather than features, and business results. And I think in the short term, the next, say, 6 to 12 months, I think we're still going to see, can we get rid of everybody and replace them with AI? But I think sooner rather than later, we're going to see that AI is a solution, but it still needs to be guided by business goals and customer problems that aren't the skill set of AI. AI is really good at volumes of information and aggregating information and finding the patterns. It's not very good at what I believe to be human judgment that you get from product managers.
I agree. All right, we're going to move to our Q&A section. So this is where we will open it up to our audience. So if you have any questions for Steve, drop them in the chat. We'll take as many as time allows. I think we have, 5 minutes or so. So Tatev, did we receive any questions?
For what it's worth, my chat window says that chat is disabled.
Oh, it's disabled. Let me see.
So while we're waiting, if you want to learn more about Quartz, what is delightful about Quartz is it's open source, free to use, with no license fees, and it's Creative Commons, whatever it is, level 4, and there you'll find templates that were created by some of our participants that you can download for free. So just go to quartzopen.com and click on the link for downloads, and you can learn, again, more about Quartz itself, but also get a set of kind of a starter kit of tools and templates to get you going in this more business-oriented role of product management. We have a number of one-page templates You know, I think I mentioned to you, Ross, earlier, I'm wild about one-pagers. I have learned that, well, even myself as an executive, I zone out after a page or two. So I try to compress my information such that it'll fit on one page, because people tend to read those. And when you hand them a 50-page document, they dump the whole thing into ChatGPT and say, please summarize this document. So
yeah, I think, you know, people don't have time for long, lengthy documents anymore. So
right.
Going back to your original thing, keeping it simple, straightforward, I think everyone appreciates that.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So I don't know. So we'll catch up with Q&A maybe, you know, in the recording. But in closing, I'd just like to, maybe we'll close it down here. I want to thank you, Steve, for sharing your insights, your stories, and your wisdom with us today. I think your clarity and simplicity are a breath of fresh air. I agree with all of it. In a field that's often overwhelmed, right, by process and jargon. I also thank you as well to product growth leaders for the work you know, they do in shaping strong customer-focused product teams. And to our audience, this is the kind of conversation that we build every day inside product management advisor community. If you're not yet a member, I invite you to explore our platform, from coaching and mentorship to job support, learning events such as this one, and engaged peer community. You know, we want to be here to help you grow and to lead with confidence. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you at the next PMA live event, which will be in August. We don't have a date yet, but we'll be getting a few product coaches together, and we'll be talking about different processes and challenges that product managers see, you know, in their real day jobs. So thank you again for joining. Thank you, Steve, and we'll conclude the session now. Thank you.
Thank you all.